In this week's episode of NDVision.
It was the live action performances of The Lion King is where they were used.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do have some pictures. They're not very great pictures. I mean, people got to eat.
Yeah.
And, people like to eat.
I love to eat, David. I love to eat.
Everybody knows what a computer mouse is, but you've got your two handhelds.
Yep.
And you could just start designing.
That's
On your, like you're
Iron Man.
You're in, yeah, exactly. You're in three-dimensional space in your living room.
Yep.
Like you can see your living room, the borders of the living room, but
Yep.
you're designing something in space.
Mm-hmm. Hello and welcome to this episode of NDVision. Today I'm joined by crafty creator connoisseur Dave Volk. Hi Dave, how's it going?
It's going great.
How'd you like the way I introduced you? Crafty creator connoisseur.
I like that.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Well, Dave, at the beginning of each episode, I just like to ask people to tell me about yourself.
Obviously, my name is David. Dave, you call me whatever. So I guess I'm just a self-proclaimed hobbyist, really, is what it comes down to. Always very involved in creating hobby-oriented all that kind of thing. So working with your hands, if it's something that you do with your hands, then I like doing it. That also means that I, think a lot. So you plan, you organize, you have certain steps that you got to follow. And some people are, they're just gifted with being able to take their brain out and just do what they want to do. Their vision comes directly out of their brain. Into what
I'm that way. I think it's something like I could do that.
Yeah, I can't do that. So how I explain it is I don't really have an artistic bone in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So if you gave me a block of granite and a chisel, forget it.
Right.
There would be nothing good that would come out of that other than a pile of rubble. But when you give me the tools, so if you gave me a computer, a CAD software, a ruler, a compass, that's where I really shine. So got to have the tools to get that vision out of my brain.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, and I didn't mention this in his intro, sorry, Dave, but Dave is the owner of Inspire Crafts and Hobbies, which is now located on the Andover Road, right? Almost
Yes.
to Elm Valley.
Yep. We're about a half mile from the Andover line, yeah.
Yeah. But were you born and raised in this area? Did you move to this area? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Holland, New York, so we're like an hour and a half away.
Okay.
And the reason I came to Wellsville, or Alfred, I suppose, is I went to Alfred State College
Okay.
For engineering.
Yeah.
So I have my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and I met my wife, Liz, here, and that's kind of why I stayed.
Okay.
So I was pursuing higher education at Alfred University, and then decided to get married, and that kind of higher education just kind of went out the window.
That's what my wife's doing right now. She's a professor at Alfred State for math. She's very much like you, where if she has like directions and a tool, she can do anything. Mm-hmm. But if she had to just, not all the time, but if she had to just create something out of her mind, she struggles a little more with that. But so you were going to be into higher education. You obviously had a family that took over. Where'd you go from there?
Well, so right out of college, I was hired by Dresser-Rand here in Wellsville.
Okay.
And that's back when Dresser-Rand was actually Dresser-Rand, their own single company.
Before Siemens.
Before Siemens, yep. So I was hired as an analytical engineer, and I did mostly rotor dynamics.
Okay.
After a few years, I kind of moved to doing stress engineering too, stress and strain relationships in turbine blades. And I worked there for 9 years. But even before that, I had always had, since 2008, I'd always had my own business.
Okay.
So in 2008, I started my first sole proprietorship. I think that's what you call it.
Yeah, that's what I am still. I'm an LLC, but I'm a sole proprietorship LLC.
And so I really got into jewelry making. Now, jewelry making as a niche, it was chainmail jewelry. Most commonly, when people just hear chainmail, they're just like, "Oh, those terrible letters, from the mail." But people don't even know what that thing is anymore. But more chainmail, like if you went to a Renaissance fair, and you saw somebody in a suit of chainmail armor, the same rings that would be used to make that armor, you just combine them in a different orientation to make jewelry.
Okay.
So I started doing that. We got on the Allegheny Artisans and did that for quite a while.
Where were you doing that out of?
So initially, I was doing it right out of a trailer that we were renting.
Okay.
Just a old 70s junk trailer.
Yeah.
And after I did the jewelry for a while, I started making just the components.
Okay.
So if the jewelry was made out of a ring, I was just making the rings to sell, and I did that for quite a long time.
Were they like blanks or?
You can consider it that way.
Okay.
Just a single ring, and I'd make them in by the million. I think one of our best years that we did over 1 million single rings.
And how big are these? Like this?
I mean, they could go from like the ring that attaches to a clasp on your necklace. I mean, very small to very large.
Okay.
And we just made all kinds. Now we still do that. We still sell online. But that's really where I got my start in a small business.
Who was your biggest client when you were doing that?
Really, it was, if we're talking like biggest volume, it was just people making jewelry, really.
Okay. Would you sell to someone like a Steve Walker Metalsmiths, or was it more like who were you selling to, I guess?
Well, it was people that were going to the Renaissance fairs. It was
Okay.
people that were making the costumes.
So their own, like the cosplayers, they were doing their own thing.
Yep.
Okay.
We had a very successful run with a lady that did bridles for horses.
Okay.
So she was very heavily involved with Arabian horses, and she'd take Arabian horses to shows and all kinds of stuff, fancy tack. And we did some bridles. We had embarked into things that I didn't know anything about, welding the chains, because they still had to be functional.
Right.
So welding and then having them sent out and to be gold plated and all kinds of really interesting stuff that I'd never done before. So that was one customer that was very interesting to venture out to do things that I really wasn't comfortable doing. We had trials and tests. I mean, they would take my chains and they would hook them to a fence post and pull them apart with a tractor.
Oh, just to see how strong they were?
How strong they were.
Now, when you say welding, are you talking like you had to have a mask on and like a MIG welder, or are you like a small scale, like soldering style?
So small scale resistance welding. So 2 electrodes would come out of the welding machine and you'd touch the ring to the electrodes and it would just resistance weld, like a spot welder.
Okay.
Set up in a specific way just for the rings.
Okay.
And that was, we probably did hundreds of those bridles. And then as time changed, styles changed. So that wasn't something we did anymore because that wasn't in vogue, I guess, for Arabian horses.
Huh. And I imagine, how heavy are these? Because people are wearing them, right?
So they could, a lot of people, their preference is to wear a piece of jewelry that has weight to it.
Okay.
So it could be, ounces maybe of silver. I worked a lot with precious metals, so silver. We did some gold work, but gold's really expensive when you're talking about heavy weight.
Yeah. I'm the exact opposite. These are just those
those
little rubber rings, and they're so I don't even know it's there.
Yeah, and then so that was a big deal for us because that was something that we'd never done before. And then there was a time where I got contacted by it was Walt Disney Creative Costuming.
Okay.
So it's a division. I guess it's a division in the theme parks only, where they were buying rings from India or somewhere, and they were using steel rings, and they were they would come to the conclusion after every performance that the weight of the rings was very hard on the performers.
Okay.
Because the rings would be bouncing back and forth on their legs and on their arms. And it was like a cold call. It was just like, oh, we found you through whatever channel, and we see that you make aluminum rings of the size that we'd want. And I made up special tooling to make exactly what they wanted. And we're talking orders of, tens of thousands of these rings. And they were decently sized, probably about the size of a small key ring.
Mm-hmm.
And we would send them to them, and they would build them into their costumes.
Really?
Yeah. So it was the live action performances of The Lion King is where they were used.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do have some pictures. They're not very great pictures. Probably somebody that was down there for the show and was able to sneak a picture out would have better pictures of what the costumes look like.
Really?
But that was kind of a big deal. Now they haven't contacted us for quite a while to get any more. They probably moved on, or maybe they have enough, or whatnot.
It's Disney. They probably figured out how to do it themselves and stole the way to do it.
It could, I guess there's no proprietary method on making a ring.
Right. So I still think when you're saying jewelry and rings, I still just my mind automatically goes to just like finger rings.
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
rings.
So if you just took a ring, I mean yours or mine, and when you manufacture a ring, you're not making it one complete circle. It would be made from a spring. So you'd take wire and you'd coil it into a long spring.
Okay.
And then if you cut down one side of the spring, all the rings fall off the spring, and they're partially opened, because you'll have one part of the ring one pitch over, or one wire diameter over from the other.
Okay.
And when people make chainmail, what they'll do is they'll open the ring, and they'll twist it. They won't open the ring like a C. They won't make a C out of it. They'll actually twist it open.
Okay.
So it looks more like an elongated spring, and then they can close it without the ring being deformed.
Right.
And that's general. I could have brought some, but
Dave, you dropped the ball, David.
or think of it as a the rings to put on a shower curtain.
Yeah.
You know how those open up to the side and then they snap closed?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people that are teaching other people to make armor will use those.
Okay.
So if you could think of it that way.
Now, have you ever been to any of the Renaissance fairs and like seen your work?
I've never seen any of my work personally at a Renaissance fair.
Okay.
But I have a lot of pictures from our customers where they would show us things that they made.
That's cool.
But most of that would be for jewelry, chain making,
Right.
Or a really fancy, like just centerpieces on a necklace,
Yeah.
and things like that. Hand jewelry and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, if you could think about it, they've done it.
Yeah. I go to a lot of anime festivals and the or anime conventions, and the costumes there are just, people spend years sometimes making those, and it's insane. I'd rather just go to Amazon and buy or eBay. I know. Shh, I said the A word. So you were doing rings. What else is on your docket? What else do you do?
Oh gosh. Because of my background, I love hopping on the computer to do CAD design.
Okay.
It's really not a skill that tons of people have. More people would be like, oh, I wouldn't be able to do that ever, But the barrier of entry is downloading a free hobbyist use license of a software and just doing it, really.
Mm-hmm. And CAD is computer-aided drafting, right? For those who
Correct.
don't know.
Yep. So there's for the hobbyist, it's not in the commercial. If they're not going to be making anything for money, all these programs are free. So just go on, download them, and try them out. You're not going to break anything.
Right.
Just start learning. But I did a lot of CAD because that's what I kind of minored in college. So I just love sitting behind a computer and designing things.
Yeah.
But again, it's got to be straight line, angles and lengths. The artistic side I don't do, but the technical side very well oriented with that.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I love just starting with nothing and being like, how can I do this and what can I do to make this look interesting without, like when I'll come to cooking. When I'm looking through just thinking of what ideas I can have, I'll look at pictures and I'll be like, I can do that. I don't go into the recipe and see everything that they use. I kind of just see what it is and what it's called. And then if it's something I don't know, I'll go in and I'll just look at the ingredients, but I won't look at their measurements because I want to make it my way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which sometimes isn't a great way to do things. I feel like you should probably start doing it the correct way and then branching off into your own kind of style. But I'm just not a rule follower. Okay. I feel like that's following like directions and rules and stuff. That's why. I love going out, and that's why I love running camera, right? Because I go out and I can just film a bunch of things and then come into the edit bay and create something from what I filmed. Or Stefan, who my editor is now, he'll create something of what I filmed. And I like talking to people, and he sounds very much like you and my wife, where you like nothing more than just sit behind a computer all day in a darkened room. And 12 hours feels like 5 minutes to you. Now 12 hours behind a computer to me would feel like a lifetime.
Yeah.
And out in the field, doing it feels like 5 minutes when it's been 10 hours to me.
Yeah. So just I love that aspect. I mean, I've worked with Ryan Nixon, who owns Stitch's Loft.
Yeah. He does a lot of Stargate.
Does tons of cosplay stuff.
Yeah.
So I have, he needed a dummy radio back. So a lot of the props that you use at conventions they're fake. Yeah, they don't work. They're if you needed to bring in some sort of weapon, everything is fake. They have swords have foam blades, or some swords have dulled blades and things like that. So I worked with him to get him a radio back that would go on a Motorola radio. Okay. And I sat down and I did 4 iterations. I had my first draft, I guess you could call it, and then I was like, oh, well, that didn't work the way I wanted it to. So then I revised it 4 different times and got to something that was pretty much identical to what he had. Right. And just stuff like that I just love doing. But I work very heavily with 3D printing. Okay. And that's kind of a instant gratification. Well, it's not instant, but it's quick. It's quick gratification.
18 hours later.
So I designed what I wanted. I printed it, and I was like, well, it really wasn't what I had hoped it to be. So then you go in and you revise your model, and then you print another one. So every time you print one, it's like 2 hours, and then you get to the end result, and you're like, wow, it's pretty good. So it's very good feedback. And at that time, my one 3D printer was right next to my modeling computer. So I would just watch it, and anybody that's involved in 3D printing, the sounds that they make are quite relaxing to me. Maybe they wouldn't be relaxing to other people. But you're just hearing that in the background. It's just this dull whine of the motors, and you get to the end result. And when I look at something that works after I've spent 4 hours on a model, I'm like, there we go.
Now, for me, I have zero idea how 3D printing works. Can you kind of explain how do you push something into the printer and it just kind of creates it for you?
So, well, I'll explain it to you just like how I try to explain it to everybody. Okay. So if you have your model, most 3D printed models have already been created.
And you're talking this would be on your computer.
On your computer model. Yeah, or a physical model. Okay. Maybe somebody has scanned it. So at the Smithsonian, they have teams of people that scan stuff, and they upload it as a 3-dimensional model online. So you can go in and you can take the statue of whatever and download it as a 3-dimensional model. Okay. So a lot of people, if they want to print something, they'll go right online, and there's online repositories, and they'll download whatever they want to print. Maybe it's a part for a vacuum cleaner that somebody has broken, and it just so happens you broke the same thing. Okay. So you could go online, you download that piece, You import that into what's called a slicer. Mm-hmm. There's very many open source slicers.
So it's just a piece of software.
It's a piece of software, yep.
Okay.
And that slicer performs exactly this function of its name. It slices it into individual layers.
So you're talking from the bottom to the top.
Bottom up, yep.
Not like vertically, horizontally.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that's really how the program, how the 3D printer is going to interpret all the information, layer by layer. So think of it just a stack of paper. Mm-hmm. So think of your favorite sculpture, and now make it out of sheets of paper one at a time. So each sheet of paper is going to be cut in a specific piece, or a specific shape, and then they're all going to get stacked together.
Okay. And it can close as it rises, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So you take that information from the slicer, and it converts it into a machine language, which is called G-code.
Okay.
And then G-code is just it's positioning data, so the machine knows where to go.
Okay.
So it's going to be X and Y coordinates, it's going to be Z coordinates, and then it's going to have some other information there, how much material it's going to use and things like that.
Right.
And really the best way I explain it to people is after it's in the machine, a 3D printer just really acts like a very sophisticated soft serve ice cream machine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the nozzle squirts out hot plastic, very similar to a hot glue gun.
Yep.
And it spits out that plastic in the shapes that it needs to for each layer, and it builds one layer on top of another.
Okay.
And then, when it's done, you've got this solidified thermoplastic model or item.
So is that what it is? Because that was going to be my next question: is what is the material that go? Because it looks like string almost.
Yes.
It looks like a thick fly line, like a more firm fly line, but.
Yeah, so it's filament. It's a thermoplastic. Most commonly used is what's called PLA or polylactic acid.
Okay.
The corn-based derivative plastic.
It's corn? It's corn.
Corn-based. Now, a lot of early on, everybody was just like, "Oh, it's renewable. It's biodegradable."
It's
No,
not.
It's not for 50,000 years.
Oh, geez.
It's not that great for the environment, but it's better than like ABS plastic that your Lego are made out of, Mm-hmm. So, but it's just a low temperature thermoplastic. Now, when I say low temperature, I'm still talking like 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So
Right.
It's really not that low.
So you don't want to have it drip on your finger when it's printing out there.
No, it's definitely very hot.
Yeah.
It's much hotter than a hot glue gun, but it's not like a torch hot,
Now, are the possibilities limitless with what you is? I mean, I guess it would just depend on the size of your printer, right?
Yes, yeah. So that's filament printing is one area. Now there's all kinds of different 3D printing. There's printers that use powdered titanium, and a laser comes down, and so you got powdered titanium across the whole surface, and the laser comes down and solidifies or welds together the parts or that layer, and then a tool head comes over and deposits another layer of powdered titanium over that, and then the laser solidifies the titanium again, and those are used in industry. So we have real.
That's how
functioning.
Teslas are made. I'm just kidding. It's not how Teslas are made.
I don't know.
There
could be some parts.
Yeah.
So in industry, that's a real, like your plane turbine, the engine on a Boeing could be made out of some 3D printed
Really?
parts. Yep.
Wow. And how long is this? Do you know how long this has been kind of commercially available to people? Because it seems like you can buy a decent 3D printer now for like $300.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was using 300. I was using 3D printers in college, so 2002.
So it's been around for a while.
Yeah,
then.
and that was, 3D printing really initially was a proprietary thing.
Okay.
So companies patented the processes and they patented the filament delivery and things like that. Well, all those patents ran out or went to open source or whatever happened to them. And then people really started picking up as a hobby. Now, I would probably say late 90s. I'm not sure on that.
So it's probably around much longer than that, but it just started becoming, it seems like it just started becoming really popular in the last 10 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where people are actually just, so a kid puts a 3D printer on their Christmas list, you know what I mean? And their parents can go out and buy it, just like a gaming system that they would buy.
Yeah, and right now, 3D printers are becoming appliances, is what's happening. So we've went from, this is only for the hobbyist that wants to build it themselves or to tinker with it forever and maybe not get any good result, to this is an appliance. You buy it and it just works, just like your refrigerator works.
Right, you're like, you'll have like on your, you can select different images and you can just click on an image and it'll print it probably. That's where it's going.
Very similar, yeah.
That's the same thing with cameras. I mean, cameras used to be more elusive. Like if you wanted to hire a wedding videographer, you had to find a wedding videographer. Now, I mean, and this isn't a bad thing, but now people have just in the palm of their hand.
Yeah, better cameras than.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times a cell phone shot has. I've talked about this before on the podcast, but how many times a cell phone shot has gone into like a really high end video that I'm producing, and people can't tell the difference. If you're really gonna blow it up, they might, but they're good now.
I just saw must have been an ad for the newest Samsung S24 or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was like, look at how good it is under low light or something.
Are you a Samsung or Android or
I'm
iPhone?
an Android person.
You're an Android person?
Yeah.
Android Unite. Apple people. Yeah, I'm calling you out.
I talk about 3D printers being as an appliance in an ecosystem, and I suppose you start going more to the Apple side.
Another thing that actually, real quick first though, I actually had you 3D print because I'm really getting back into 360 content, and you're also into RC.
Yes.
Right, RC racing. So I had you 3D print a camera mount that could utilize the 360 cameras monopod to be able to drive around. I think it was for Ridgewalk.
Yeah.
Ridgewalk. So you could just drive around and move with the thing, and it just amazed me how you did it. You're like, oh, you just took the measurements of the monopod, basically just the stick that the camera goes on. You're like, yeah, I could do that. And 2 days later, I feel like it was done.
Well, and it's not instant gratification, right? Because it does take a long time to sit in front of a computer and design something. But I like proving to myself that I can do it.
Right.
And so that was a project. I still have all that remote control truck has been converted back to a truck instead of a camera platform, but I still have all that stuff somewhere.
Yeah. I've learned that when you're in 360 space, movement is not always great because your what is it, vertigo kicks in and you're like, oh. So I just did I don't know if you saw it, I just did a 360 tour of the David Howe. And what I did, I had Nick Gunning, the director. I just set the camera up, and he was the movement.
Okay.
In it, right? So the camera wasn't moving; he was moving. So I was like, walk around, so that way whoever was watching it in their VR goggles would follow him. And you can do it with your phone too. But I learned that I'm like, moving the camera isn't great inside a 360 space.
Well, you almost have to have like a super gimbal to make sure that it's.
Well, it's actually very smooth, but it's just the sense as if you're standing still. Like they have treadmills now for the VR.
Oh, okay.
So that way you're moving. But if you're standing still and something's moving and you're in that space,
Gotcha.
It's a little trippy.
I suppose
people were like puking and not with my stuff, but that's just kind of what I was researching. Like, oh, that's where I went wrong.
I think a little bit of like that is like racing drones. There was a stint where I did a lot of things with racing drones, FPV.
Yeah.
And you couldn't just stand stationary in one position, or I couldn't anyway.
Right.
And pilot this thing. I had to be leaning up against something or sitting in a chair.
Right, because you're vertigo, right?
Okay,
FPV, by the way, is first person point of view.
So yeah, I guess I can understand that. I never thought of it though, because every time I see a 360 on something, watch a YouTube video or whatever, it's just like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah. Well, it's like just like 3D printers. I mean, it's becoming more and more common. I think when I first started getting into it, it was still an outlier, still a niche, like you're talking about, where just the creators and people who really wanted to dive into it. But now, with like Apple Vision and the Oculus Rift and everything that they have, it's becoming more and more common. So I'm trying to dive on it more and more.
Yeah, I think and I don't know anything about the space because I just haven't invested in anything to get any equipment, but augmented reality is going to be a lot
really big,
a lot more interesting, I think, than virtual reality.
So augmented reality, just to explain, is there's a wine company that if you scan their wine bottles, I think they have like presidents on them. The president will just like come to life and start talking about their history and whatnot. That's augmented reality. And virtual reality is when you're in quotations immersed into it and there's not much from the real world in it. Is a simple way to explain it.
Very fledgling technology, but they have CAD programs in augmented AR. And that's going to be super cool because it's just like you have two mice, for I guess for lack of a better word. Everybody knows what a computer mouse is, but you've got your two handhelds, and you could just start designing.
That's
on your, like you're
Iron Man.
You're in, exactly. You're in 3-dimensional space in your living room.
Yep.
Like you can see your living room, the borders of the living room, but you're designing something in space. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I'd like to do some of that.
Yeah.
I'd almost like just to be able to.
We need to work together on that.
Well, we could.
I'm down.
Yeah. I'd like to be able to hook an electrode to my head and just have it come out right the first time, right? Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. I would like to just close my eyes and be able to watch a movie and not have to have anything else on. I want to get into the Makers Expo.
Yeah.
Explain to me how that came to be, because you're an integral part of it. Explain to me everything about it.
So Wellsville Schools, the whole school district has it's called the Twin Tiers Maker Expo.
Okay.
And I got involved very early. I'm a club advisor at the school it's called Wellsville SWAT. So it's the students who assist with technology. And so it's an after-school club. So on Mondays I meet with a bunch of kids, and they have picked projects that they want to do. And so the Twin Tiers Maker Expo was kind of a product of people at the school plus the kids, and then me being an advisor. I got really involved, and it's an event where people from the community and students from the community, students in the schools, can
not just Wellsville schools,
really anywhere, Twin Tiers. So I mean, if you were from Rochester or probably Syracuse, we'll invite you because we want more people to attend.
Sure.
So it's really an outlet for people to showcase what they can do in the STEAM fields, Or
what's STEAM?
So STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Okay.
They took STEM and they threw arts in there too.
Okay.
And made it STEAM. And then there's STREAM, which I don't know what the R is.
Regulatory. I just made that up. That's not really a thing.
And it's a wonderful event. We've had it every year aside from the COVID years.
Right.
It's just a wonderful event for people to come from the community, and we've got fun things like in a bubble. So we take a hula hoop I mean, people. So